just gonna stand out there like a hobo, Matt? Or are you gonna come in, have a drink?
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. So episode 8 of Daredevil Born Again showed us why this is absolutely one of the all-time best MCU shows, but the episode also exposes a key flaw to the series that I think prevents it from being perfect. But I'm going to explain how everything wrong with this show is actually because of all this behind-the-scenes drama and the various reshoots. This episode actually shows us exactly what they changed and added in, and I'm going to talk to Colton Ogburn and Cameron Kasky to find out what worked and what didn't. As always, subscribe to ScreenCrush on all your favorite podcast platforms, and you only have another week to buy our Daredevil parody merch from our store. Links are below. Thank you for your support. So first, let me talk about where this episode excels over so many other Marvel shows. Visually, this show is, well, I mean, it's created for grown-ups. Like most shows in the MCU have had the same look, you know, bright color palettes, like a clean digital sheen. But this show feels like it was shot in real buildings, not on sets. The lighting isn't afraid to be darker, and these shadows accentuate the performances on the actors' faces. But mostly, God, I just gotta praise the way they used camera tricks and movements to showcase Daredevil's powers. So we saw a little bit of this in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, like the way he used a dolly zoom to showcase his spider sense. But in the Daredevil Netflix series, we mostly saw Matt like tilt his head when he used his powers, and then they left it up to sound design. There was also the time we actually saw how his radar sense worked, but mostly his powers were not showcased visually. But in this episode, we have this brilliant end sequence where the aspect ratio actually shifts outward to show us what it's like as Matt attunes his senses. In comics, I guess it's the equivalent of making the reader rotate the comic to read what's going on. And then they use the aspect ratio shift again to hone in on Bullseye. And also, the performances from Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox are stronger than anything we have seen in a Marvel show. I mean, I'd have to do the math, but I think these two have played these characters for more hours than any other Marvel character outside of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they can step into these roles with such familiarity that they just disappear inside their skin. Fisk, in particular, is the most nuanced, horrifying villain in the MCU. Like when Fisk shows Adam to Vanessa, D'Onofrio plays him like a child who is showing his mom a secret pet he's kept in the basement.
I am better than I was.
But then his nervousness explodes into a tantrum.
Swear to God.
Shut up!
And you can really see this is an emotionally unstable monster who has somehow been granted ultimate power in this city. Like in the range of MCU villains, I think he's closest to a Loki, a spoiled brat demagogue who never got over his childhood insecurities. Now compare this show to something like Moon Knight, which I enjoyed, but the characters in that show never really felt like people. They feel like Marvel characters. Whereas even the basic supporting characters on this show feel like they have other lives. Like when the cameras stop rolling, we feel like they continue on outside the frame. And I also appreciated how well this story wove together the various plot threads from the season. In a 1-minute, one-take shot, the camera moves to various supporting characters as we get the feeling that the pieces are being moved around on the chessboard for the final move. Daniel thinks he's manipulating BB, and later we find out that BB is actually manipulating him. She knew that Fisk killed her uncle, and like Fisk, she has a double identity.
Not everything I write is under my name.
But it's not all good. I mean, you guys know how much I love a good connection to the MCU, and all season long, I wanted the show to have more connections. You know, like The Hole.
I want you to stop what you're doing and fill that hole.
I want to know what superhero or villain made that hole. So it might surprise you to hear that my least favorite part of this episode was its biggest MCU Easter egg, Jack Duquesne as the swordsman. Now,
Mr. Airy, your test results just came back and you are unhealthy. No more cereal for you.
oh no, you don't understand.
No, this is for your own good.
Oh, this isn't unhealthy cereal. This is Magic Spoon cereal, which tastes exactly like the cereals from my childhood, but contains 13 to 14 grams of protein, 0 sugar, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs in each serving. And that's why I love having Magic Spoon as a sponsor for this video. It's delicious and it fits a variety of diets. It's high protein, no sugar, and great for carb-conscious lifestyles. There's also a wide variety of cereals to choose from. There's chocolate, fruity, blueberry muffin, cinnamon toast, peanut butter, and many more. But now they've also introduced Magic Spoon treats, which have 11 to 12 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs. Perfect for really busy days when I just need a snack.
Hey, is that like cereal in a pouch or something?
Actually, no, this is Magic Spoon's brand new granola. It has 13 grams of protein and 0 added sugar in flavors like honey almond and peanut butter. The granola is actually great for eating with yogurt and milk or just as a snack. Guys, if you watch this channel a lot, then you know we love this cereal. I have a bowl every morning, and you will not believe how good it tastes. In fact, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it is backed with a 100% happiness guarantee online. So, if you don't like it for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Magic Spoon lets us be the kind of adults that we always wanted to be when we were kids. Eat tasty cereals and watch Marvel shows all day. So click my link in the description or scan this QR code to try Magic Spoon cereal, treats, or granola today and get $5 off your order. You can also find Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. Now back to the swordsman. I love Tony Dalton. He was incredible in Better Call Saul as the friendliest, most frightening villain of the series.
Tie that off before you bleed to death.
And in the show Hawkeye, Tony Dalton was mostly a red herring. I mean, Kate thought he was a master criminal, which distracted us from the revelation that her mother was actually the one who was working with Fisk. But the swordsman is a really fun character in the comics. He's a villain turned Avenger. He trained Hawkeye, and he was a key player in the Matt Fraction run that the Hawkeye series was based on. And he married Mantis, and Kang conducted the ceremony. So I am up for seeing this character do more in the MCU, but instead we got this.
Look how crazy that is. Like, where do you learn that? Kind of looks like a swordsman. Swordsman, if you're watching this, keep doing the good work.
And then this.
Shall I call you swordsman?
What?
Now, if that seems like a half-assed reveal, it's because it is, but there's a reason for that. Remember, this show originally had different showrunners, Matt Corman and Chris Ord. They shot about 6 episodes of the series before the Hollywood strikes. Now, according to reports, the series was much more of a legal drama, with each episode featuring a different case. Daredevil didn't even appear in costume till episode 6, and there were very few connections to the original Netflix series. There are even rumors that Karen and Foggy were killed off-screen. But Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio were not happy with this direction. They complained to Kevin Feige, who then replaced the showrunners with Punisher showrunner Dario Scardapane. In an interview with Collider, Scardapane praised those original 6 episodes, but he said that they did go back and add in more material before writing the final 3 episodes. So let's think about what was added. Foggy's on-screen death in the opening action scene, that was new. Frank Castle's cameo in episode 4 was also added in later, and I think you can tell that the swordsman was likely a late addition. That's why he's only featured in crappy cell phone footage, and then suddenly is a bigger deal in the second to last episode. And frankly, this kind of sucks. I mean, think about it. In the comics, if they were going to do a storyline with the swordsman, then he would have encountered Daredevil like on a rooftop or in the middle of some crime-stopping adventure. Matt would have worked out his identity, they would have realized they have a common enemy, Fisk. This storyline would have been seeded over time. So in the Mayor Fisk run of the comics, it makes sense when Fisk rails against vigilantes. After all, in the comics, New York is filled with vigilantes. But in the show, they're kind of reaching to justify the existence of his vigilante task force. I mean, he name drops a few people.
We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit.
But this is part of the show's pattern of telling us things instead of showing us things. I mean, if there are too many vigilantes in the city, show us. And I get it. This is a TV show and not a comic book. It's really hard to coordinate production schedules, find locations, get craft services, actors. I get it. I've worked in production.
Making a movie, not as glamorous as it seems.
And I think that Scardapane has done a good job with what he was given. Mostly though, I'm excited for what he can do with season 2, with a streamlined plan from the start. I think that season 2 can give us the Defenders team up that we always wanted. Now, I'll talk about that in a bit, but first, let me bring on 2 of my all-time favorite people. We have Colton Ogburn, the guy who's trapped in our television and doesn't know it, so please don't tell him, and Cameron Kasky, who is, of course, the intern that we fire every week. Colton, let's start with you. You haven't been on nearly enough to talk about Daredevil. You've been wrapped up in Severance stuff. What are your thoughts on this episode and anything you've seen so far you want to talk about?
Well, look, I think the show is fine. It's good. It's probably the best show apart from Loki and WandaVision that Marvel Studios has made. Having said that, I do have a lot of complaints with the show. I think it is a very ugly show, especially when you compare it to the color grading. Yeah, I think it's hideous.
I think you're wrong, but go ahead. Let's hear you out before we discuss why you're wrong.
The whole thing just looks like they took this. Yeah, it looks like they put cellophane over the lens. Everything is just kind of blurry, and not all of this is the show's fault. Disney Plus, when they put their shows on there, it's like they don't upload it beyond 720p. It just looks ugly to me. I hated all of the light, the pale blue light I shouldn't even say blue, just pale and desaturated sunlight coming in through the windows on what I think is not great sets. I hate Matt's apartment. And I know this sounds like I'm nitpicking, and sure, you could probably say that this show looks just as good or better than some of the other stuff that Marvel Studios has put out. But when you compare it to the original show and like the contrast, the saturation, the colors, the sharpness, just the overall camera work in that original show, this show, just how it looks, doesn't feel like the original. And then you go into the fact that you can tell that it's just a hodgepodge of two completely different directions that they took the story when they stopped like mid-production and changed everything. I feared that we would feel that dip in the middle of the series. When episode 1 was so good and felt so different, and we knew that that was done post them changing everything, I was worried that the middle of the show would drop in quality and then we'd see it start to pick back up toward the end. And I'm afraid that's what we're seeing happening here. Now, having said all that, I know it sounds like I just did a lot of bitching. I do enjoy the show.
You did do a lot of bitching. And a lot of points that I just flat out don't agree with, but continue on.
I love the original, and I'm just worried that it's not quite living up to that original. But to be fair, that's a high bar to meet, and I'm hopeful that season 2 will take us there.
I don't know. I just talked about how I think the show looks leagues better than most other Disney Plus shows because they all look crisp and digital and too clean. The same thing with like Rings of Power, how everything on the show looked clean and the costumes look like costumes instead of clothes. And what you're talking about, like desaturated, I just look at it and say, yeah, it's real life. Like it doesn't, and you're right. They should upload everything in 4K. And you're also right about the higher contrast on the original series. But I think this show does things like uses depth of field and uses, focus changes and dolly zooms in a really inventive way that the visual language of the original show didn't have, just because they were pumping out so many episodes. Although, like I said, you're not wrong about the mashup between like what was shot and what they've added in.
But they do it just here and there. It's like all of the dialogue scenes are just these still shots where they just set the camera up on a tripod and they do like 3 different angles and move on. It just feels kind of cheap. And then, yeah, maybe like every 15 minutes you get this really expensive, cool dolly shot. Same thing in your vaunted
original Netflix series, though. I mean, that's dialogue shots or dialogue shots. You set them up to save money so you have the money for your one-take shots. Cameron, we're being rude. What were your thoughts on the episode before we get back to our argument?
I mean, I liked it. I liked the show.
Great. Okay, so Colton, listen, I got to tell you.
I think that the interesting thing about the show, and we talk about this every week, we talk about Daredevil, is the quality has such a wide range within the same episode, very often within a couple minutes. So some scenes are only a few minutes away from scenes that are either significantly better as if they're from a different show or feel as though they're from the not great version. But I really like it. I mean, this week's episode I didn't love in the beginning, and I sort of started to feel like, oh no, are we still in this kind of mid-season slog? But then by the end, it was just this pulse-pounding, thrilling action and character moments. I will say, and I'm sure we'll get into this separately, Michael Gandolfini is
Michael Gandolfini, ladies and gentlemen.
Him playing this absolute piece of shit, watching shit-eating grin, Michael Gandolfini being a smarmy, slimy and his back and forth with Janaea Walton, BB Urich, is so much fun. And I love Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk and Poindexter, who all give these great performances. But those two are so fun, and they make the show, they just give you this really wide range where in some scenes you're watching what feels like a psychological thriller, and then in other scenes you're watching what could survive as a proper comedy. And this episode sort of displayed the full range of Daredevil Born Again. It had scenes that were as great as the original Daredevil at its best, and it had scenes where I was like, okay, next.
Yeah, I mean, one of my main criticisms of the show so far has been that I want to see more with side characters that don't, the show shouldn't just have two protagonists in it. Colton, what were you about to say?
Can I just be super clear? I feel kind of bad, and the postman, he just brought me my Disney check, so I feel obligated to say that This show, I love Charlie Cox's portrayal. I love what he's bringing to the role. Vincent D'Onofrio, Gandolfini. I think they're all delivering really great performances, and I think the writing it's pretty good. I think my main complaint here is that I think that's been the case with a lot of the shows that they've put out. I liked She-Hulk. I liked, Loki, WandaVision. I think a lot of people did. But I feel like the production side of things is really weighing down these shows. So I just wanted to say that I agree with Cam on really what we probably should be talking about is the story and the performances. But the film nerd in me got a little gripey about it. I'm just not digging the
that's
look
what I
of
think
it.
is so interesting, because I feel like I watched a different show. Like, I'm seeing some of the things they're doing in this show on the technical level. Like, for instance, the display of Matt Murdock's powers, not using CGI, but just by using in-camera and by post techniques. I love all that stuff. And I actually just got done talking about how, for me, I agree with Matt's apartment. The set doesn't look that good, but they filmed a lot on real locations in this show. They didn't film in the volume. They went to the bank where they shot Inside Man to shoot the bank heist. That's awesome. And we don't get that grounded, gritty, realistic feeling from most Disney Plus shows outside of Andor.
One thing I have to say about this week specifically, less about the show as a whole, was watching Charlie Cox just get increasingly unhinged was so exciting, because so often you see Matt as measured and, thinking out everything he's going to do. But as this episode goes on, they build this feeling that Matt is losing control. I feel as though his hands are kind of off the wheel now, and Daredevil is calling the shots. The first time I really felt this way was when he walked into that bar and he walked out and he wasn't using his cane.
Yeah,
and they pointed out, they're
like,
he wasn't using his cane.
And the buddy's like, oh, I didn't notice. And then you look back and you're like, oh, he's been on this crescendo of this the whole episode. And, Jesse Armstrong says about Succession, the best surprises in fiction are not the ones that make you say, how did this happen? They're the ones that make you say, how didn't I see this all along? And that's how I felt when Matt was really losing his shit this week. And it was the same thing with Bullseye this week. As the episode goes on, you're watching Daredevil and Bullseye just increasingly become more unhinged, and it was so visceral and so fun, and these actors are so great. It's like, imagine being Wilson Bethel, who hasn't been in that much stuff outside of Daredevil.
Really hasn't, but he's great.
Yeah, he gave this great performance in Daredevil 3, and since then, I checked his IMDb, he hasn't been getting that much work. And then Disney calls you and they're like, hey, so remember how we started Daredevil again and you weren't invited? Yeah, you're invited now. And then he shows up and he locks the in, and it's like, all right, baby, Bethel's back.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, guys, Colton, you did a great video after the first episode where you talked about how that Foggy reshoot really saved the show. And I don't know if you guys heard me, but the showrunner, Dario Scardapane, talked about how he liked the original 6 episodes, right? Like, he loved the scripts, but then they went through and they added things in. Frank Castle was added in. John Bernthal said that he didn't like what they originally were doing. And, so this episode, my big gripe I just talked about was, for a guy who's always complaining about not enough MCU connections, we had Jack Duquesne, there he is, Tony Dalton, and all of a sudden in this episode, it's, I know you're the swordsman. And the only look that we had of him as a swordsman was the cell phone footage. And it's obvious why. And Colton, I know you're going to agree with me here. I hate when you can see the strings being pulled, but then again, it's a major $1 million production. There's, what would you like to, maybe not in a perfect world, but in the world we live in, what else could they have done here to bring him in?
I don't know. I feel a little hypocritical, because I remember when the original series was airing, I was like, why is an Avengers Tower in the skyline? Why aren't they, why don't we see Iron Man fly by real quick just for a scene? And now here they are in the greater MCU. We hear Matt Murdock saying in court, but he used his magical amulet. And I'm just kind of like, oh, yes! I don't know.
No, you got to admit, that was, look, give the man an Emmy. Screw the cast of White Lotus. Like, Charlie Cox deserves an Emmy just for that one line, how he delivered it.
I love what he's bringing to... Matt, and I say this as a straight man, but he has always been super charming in the original series.
Oh, yeah, my God, yeah.
When he cuts
in... Hey, boys, is it gay to say someone's charming?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Well, here's what I'm about to say. When he cut in with Vanessa and he's like, can I cut in? I was like, oh, okay. He's just like super smooth. I love the performance he's bringing. I love that he's able to like you were saying, Cam, he's having this darker turn. We're seeing him start to snap. And I think at the same time, we're seeing that lead to him being a little more loose and a little more funny. And like when he says to Poindexter, oh, sweetheart, do you want me to get you an appeal or something? I was like, okay, Matt, we're getting a little unhinged here. Ryan.
And he lays out the best F-bomb of the MCU.
He does!
I mean, honestly, like, Star-Lord aside, that line where he just told Bullseye where to get off was like, and Cam, to your point, everything building up with him all season long. I think he unleashed it right there. I think that was like almost like the frustration problems of Daredevil Born Again coming to a boil in one line.
And it's crazy that Disney was the first, gave us our first Matt Murdock F-bomb. we never got that in the Netflix show.
Have they not said it? I mean, there's been a few thrown around. I haven't been keeping a tally because I'm not like a network censor from the 1970s. I thought he had said it before though. Cam, what about you? What were your thoughts on your man Tony Dalton in here? Because I know you're a big fan of the actor.
Oh yeah, I mean, Tony Dalton on Better Call Saul. His character was sort of silly, but his performance was just so undeniable. And he's doing a very similar thing on this show. I hope we see more of him. He looks like someone who loves being on screen. He looks like he's having a great time, and that really fits this character of Jack because the confidence, you see him talking to Fisk, and he's formidable in front of Fisk. I said this about Bibi Urich in the first episode when she's sitting across from Fisk, and you're like, oh, this young 20-something woman is able to feel like she can stand up in front of this titan. That's how you feel about Jack, too, especially at the end of the episode when seemingly Fisk gets him to cave. We don't know if he's actually going to cave, but when Jack walks out of that room, you're like, oh, did Fisk get that leverage? It felt like an accomplishment because Jack was a force and an energy of his own. So what Tony Dalton brings to the role is just this charisma, bravado, and confidence that makes it so when somebody on the show is walking up to him and starting a conversation, you don't know who's going to hold the power in that situation because Tony's got that swagger. So even someone like Fisk, you're not necessarily watching an animal getting lured into the lion's den. They walk into the room and you're like, who's going to come out of this on top? Because if anybody besides Matt could get the upper hand on Fisk, you understand how it could be this guy.
Yeah, in our Easter egg video, we talked about how the shifting power dynamic, how in the first episode, Dalton was shot, so he's slightly higher than Fisk, even though they're both sitting down at the bar. But in this episode, Fisk is like stalking him like a predator and like looming above him. That's a great point, especially on what he can bring to the table as an actor. Go ahead, Colton.
Was this just me, to your point about them now showing Fisk bigger? They are totally like subtly showing Fisk like get bigger like throughout the season, right?
I think they shot him from below a lot more in this episode, for sure. Yeah,
and like with him, like he's super lean in the early episodes, and I feel like they're starting to maybe pad the suit a little bit or something. They're showing him eat more, like as he falls back into that darkness, and like you said, the way they're starting to shoot him and showing him just be this bigger thing. Yeah, I think they're handling that well.
Compare that to it's funny, we're griping about this show because we love the original so much, and I like I said, I think this is a great, there's some great stuff in this. It's like leagues better than Secret Invasion. But the scene, the scenes where he is being forced to listen to a children's choir sing "We Built This City," and then he has to listen to Lithuanian kids sing it. But in those scenes, he is shot like a little boy who's being forced to sit through a choir concert. He doesn't.
It reminds me of when the president has to sit at that small little desk out in that room in the White House and to sign an executive order or something, and it's that little table that they have them sit at.
Yeah, almost like he's stuck at a tiny desk concert. Back to Michael Gandolfini though. He's somebody who I think is a great. I think the side characters in this show right now are representations of people. And he's very much he reminds me of Gavrilo Principe, who's kicked off World War I, because he's a dangerous guy who's looking for a group to lead him along. And his promotion to deputy mayor of communication, I'm really excited about. I cannot wait to see how this idiot gets in there and just messes things up. And then seeing how Fisk spends it. And again, it makes me excited for things like this episode. Probably my favorite scene in it was when the cops, instead of talking, we're a private police force, blah, 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 actually just burned the guy's hand. And I think in these last 3 episodes, we are seeing a great deal more of show instead of tell, which I'm again, that was probably my favorite moment to be like, oh crap, this is bad. Like they did this in front of the commissioner with no consequences. So going into the last episode, I haven't watched it yet. Cam, what are your thoughts on where this is going to go and where it's going to lead us?
I was really curious about that because I said, is Matt just going to be off the map in this episode? Because when Bullseye shows up with the sniper, you know, you're like, okay, one of these 4 characters is going to die. I didn't think Heather would get killed just because I couldn't imagine them fridging another person who's close to Matt, especially with Foggy having died earlier this season. It would have made a bit of sense because it would have been the consequences of Matt turning Daredevil again. So Matt being Daredevil led to this, well, as far as he knew, led to this Foggy death. Then we learned some other stuff. And then him going back to it leading to Heather dying. I didn't expect that. Didn't expect it to be Fisk. I thought I thought Vanessa was going to get killed. When Poindexter goes up there with the sniper, I thought he was going for Vanessa. Bullseye, when he enters the plot of your Daredevil story, he's going to do something big. Bullseye walks into a Daredevil story and something crazy happens. So as for next episode, I am wondering how much time they're going to spend watching, making us wonder if Matt's going to be okay, seeing as we've already seen photos of him on set in season 2. And how much they're going to be wrapping up stories from this season as opposed to setting the stage for what's going to happen next.
Colton, what about you? Apart from the return of Elektra, what are you hoping for most in the finale and season 2?
Which one? Which Elektra? I want the Deadpool and Wolverine Elektra to walk in through a multiversal portal.
Wait, do you actually, Colton?
Of course not. I just hope that it's as good as the premiere. I think the finale, I think I read a report saying that it was like fully made by the new team. I'm hoping that it is brutal. I'm hoping it's gritty. A lot of this season, Charlie Cox has even talked about how he and Vincent D'Onofrio, they're co-stars of this show, but they don't share very many scenes together. I'm hoping that we get to see them share some scenes together in this finale.
I think the main Matt and Fisk scene is going to be Fisk standing over Matt's hospital bed and visiting him.
I don't know that we need to have yet another Daredevil versus Kingpin fight. I mean, that has been done. But if they do it, I would kind of like to see this show do it, especially with what you were mentioning, Ryan, with how they're have Daredevil, you know, more acrobatic now that they have the budget that they can do it. I don't
know how many fights Matt Murdock, who just got shot like right next to his heart, is going to be having.
I think it was a shoulder hit, but
yeah, it was more of a shoulder.
Like up there. Yeah, I think he. And I don't know though. You know,
we've seen Matt get pretty up and still continue on, like especially like in that first season, he got pretty roughed up, and then.
Yeah, I mean, Bullseye did some damage to him in there. I mean, he's a comic book superhero, so we'll just have to see what happens. Personally, I think they're going to suit up the swordsman. I don't think you tease him and you show him in the cell phone footage and have Tony Dalton in if you're not going to bring him around. But like I said earlier, this does bode well for season 2, which I'm going to talk to you guys about right now. Cameron and Colton, thank you guys so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Now, I mentioned that season 2 of the show is currently filming, and I'm hoping that having more lead time allows the showrunner to expand their vision. I've complained in past episodes that the show is too focused on just 2 characters, Wilson and Matt, instead of, expanding into a wide supporting cast like the Netflix series. So season 2's crackdown on vigilantes could give us a great chance to tell more stories. I mean, think about all the vigilantes that Matt can pull into his orbit. There's Punisher, who's about to star in his own R-rated one-shot. Maybe we'll get the return of the Defenders. After all, we saw Luke Cage's name on this ad for his club, Harlem's Paradise. And Kristen Ritter is already in New York right now filming the Dexter revival. But there's also Angela Del Toro, who could become the new White Tiger. There's Swordsman, or dare I hope, Spider-Man. Plus, bring in some characters from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., bring in Quake or Yo-Yo. But mostly, I want to see them use Moon Knight in this show. Now, I know we think of him as a magical character, but in the comics, Moon Knight is a street-level vigilante. He would be the perfect addition to this show. Plus, that series left us on one hell of a cliffhanger with the reveal that, there was a third personality. Now, it doesn't look like we're going to get a Moon Knight season 2, so I say, let's give Oscar Isaac some other great actors to play off of. Can you imagine a rich, nuanced character like Moon Knight on a show run by Dario Scardapane? Moon Knight would become an assassin that maybe Wilson Fisk could hire. I'd like to see him go up against Bullseye. Plus, his DID would be a perfect counterpoint to Matt's own double identity. So that's my pitch for Daredevil season 2 or even 3. But what do you guys want to see? What did you think about this episode? Let me know down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.